Welcome to Radio Free Will. I'm your host, George McCullen, coming at you live and direct from Griggstown, New Jersey. And we're back again with Michelle Mockers, artist, activist, and philosopher. It's a hot day in New Jersey, and Michelle, I think we're going to make it a little bit hotter today, right? We're going to pick up, folks, where we left off. Last week we discussed Michelle's general rules for living a wonderful life. The first rule was no armies, collaboration, or countries. But before we jump into number 2, which is government, which has as many men as women representing themselves. I just want to ask, Michelle, how are you doing today?
Not too bad, despite the heat. But the heat, you can always fight the heat, one way or another way.
As long as you don't move around too much. Before we got started, you said something about you wanted to call out all the politicians.
Yeah, because, we're going to enter, in fact, the campaign. And if I can say so, it will start. It starts in September. Forget the vacation time. Nobody's listening, People are on the beach or whatever. Forget. But in September, everybody goes back to work, more or less. And it's September that it will start. And I thought of something which bothers me since a long period of time. In fact, the basic truth of all that in America, I'm talking about America and not worldwide. In America is that America is not the democracy that it pretends to be.
How so?
For 2 reasons, my dear. Two mechanical, if I can say, reasons. One is that democracy is a moral concept. It's not a practical concept. It's basically, in the beginning, a moral concept. And if you look in the dictionary, you will see that it is the government of the people, by the people, for the people. And we can say that America is everything but the government of the people, by the people, for the people. It's the government of the people who put the money in. And the price of the White House is so ridiculous that the people will never be it's impossible to be in that cell. But the people with the money, they provide the money. In other words, democracy is the people. At the time where you have influences which are not the people, that's already wrong. It's totally wrong. So you have 2 basic things why democracy does not exist. Number 1, all the people, all the young people, all the future citizens should be entitled to exactly the same education. Some can go on forever, but some are limited, but that's something else. Every kid is entitled to the same complete education, which is not at all what we give here. Not at all. You have to pay, and not only that, if you want to go a little further on, you have to borrow money to be able to go on, which is precisely out of what I call democracy. And the second thing of not democratic at all is the election themselves. The stage is monopolized by 2 parties, the Republican and the Democrats. The rest of it, forget it. They are the only one with the power of television, of all what you want. They have absolutely everything, and nobody else than Republican and Democrats can basically have a chance, or even to present himself. Democracy should allow to all parties to present themselves, even if they are not elected, and that does not exist. In other words, for me, America is not a democracy. Actually, it's a, if I can use that ugly word, it's a Pluto democracy, a democracy in the hands of few people with all the money, and few companies with all the money.
Well, you certainly see that nowadays, but is there a way for us to get to a position where our country, our nation is represented by the people?
So how shall we do? Up to the end of it, we follow like that, and we follow those who tell us this is what you do, what you must do, even if it's not true. So we are following like a flock of sheep. Huh?
Well, I suppose the argument for that is that you don't want mob rule.
You don't want what?
Mob rule. So the majority of the people don't want immigration or whatever, so you want minority opinions protected, but I guess if there was free speech, minority opinions would be.
Yeah, but you know, when you say free speech free speech and free opinion, forget it. You don't have free speech. No, you don't have free speech. When you read here, when you read papers, when you listen to the radio, it's always the same way. Nothing on the side. Nothing.
And how do we get to a position where we do have what you're proposing?
Oh, my dear, that's where, in the actual condition, it's impossible. The only solution is to put back what we have today and to create something else.
And
something democratic. Excuse me, something democratic.
And how do you see that democratic society?
I told you already, all kids with education, all people with education, and all political party with the right and the same possibility to be known, the same right as any other party. There is no reason why two parties monopolize the game. That's absolutely undemocratic.
So we were talking probably a couple of years ago that you said in France that all parties are allowed to be on the ballot, and how does that work?
It works. It will work for as much as I know. I don't go to France anymore, but when I was leaving France, all parties were entitled to project themselves, with one condition, because all had the same advertising paid by the government. In fact, you cannot put a big sum of money to make some advertising, like here. Here, you have companies or people who give a lot of money to advertise, which absolutely is anti-democratic. Where is the people in that? Only the people with the money. And it's where it's absolutely unfair. So in France, it was all parties could be represented at the condition to make a minimum. If there were not that minimum, and I believe the minimum was 5 or 6%, something like that, you were obliged to pay the advertising. So that had been done for the party.
So it's government funded.
Government funding means
Elections.
that private people cannot interfere in the election. Here, the election is private people, those with the money. We know very well that America is in the hands of few people, and those few people can do what they want. It's not new, when you read Thomas More in the 16th century, it was already exactly the same thing. But the same thing goes on. But today, they put it under the title of democracy, which is completely wrong. And the people follow once more like a flock of sheep, because they don't even know what democracy, the definition of democracy. I'm sure that if we go in the street and we interview a certain number of people, they will absolutely be unable to give us a clear definition of democracy.
And so you were saying that the elections are bought by the people with the money. But it's amazing to me, an individual can only provide up to $2,800, I believe, per candidate. It's amazing to me that unless they're working the rules somehow. It's amazing to me that a politician would be bought off at such a low price. $2,800 doesn't seem like that much money. You couldn't buy me off for $2,800. I don't get it.
Yeah, because there is nothing to get, my dear.
I mean, $2,800. We all do a lot of fighting amongst each other. If everybody just put $2,800 onto a politician, it could go a long way.
You know, in fact, when you really look at history, at what means the word democracy, we are not a democracy. We have never been a democracy. The Constitution is not a democratic Constitution. Not at all. It doesn't give a damn thing about the freedom of speech or opinion.
So would you propose, the United States is a republic, so the public is supposedly represented by officials that are supposed to vote, pass laws in their behalf. Would you propose anything like a direct democracy where people vote over the internet or whatever? Everybody gets a vote on whatever bill, whatever law comes along?
That could be organized, my dear. Today we have a lot of modern means of telling the government, for example, that this or that, you don't like this or you don't like that, or you like this or you like that. So everything to be, if you want, we are on a whole system which has not evolved at all. It's exactly the same thing as in the beginning. In the beginning, there was no consideration, absolutely no consideration for the problem like democracy or the problem like economy. They don't talk about economy. Our economy was going to become the big thing, the industrial revolution, which was going to change the way of living of people. And we are still, my dear, we are still in the industrial revolution type. Means that the people with the money, they are of course obliged today where it's a little more or a little less, if you want, stringent than it was 2 centuries ago, but it's still the same thing. The people with the money, the industry, govern you, give you how much you must in. It's still the people with the power in their hands that govern you. You can do what you want. It's still like that.
Well, it has changed a little bit. In the United States, women have the right to vote. African Americans, although there's still institutional racism and racism around, they get to vote. So it has changed a little bit. God knows it only took 200 years, but...
Yeah, a little bit for the things which are absolutely unavoidable. Excuse me, there was no way to do otherwise. So it came by itself. It came under the necessity, which is completely wrong, which means that people don't think of what they should do, or what they could do, or what they have to do. Finally, they took a decision because they have no way to do otherwise.
Or they got comfortable enough with their power that they said, all right, we can let
Yeah, because these
people in.
You know, I always quote the man of all seasons. You know, in the 1500, when he described exactly the rich. He said the rich, they do everything to keep their money, to have more money, and when they do and have enough money, they transform that into laws that allows them to keep that money with no problem. It's exactly the same thing. It did not change, my dear. Modernize, but not change.
I mean, if you think about it, women were given the right to vote in the United States. What was that, in the 30s, 20s, 30s, 1920s, 30s?
Well, because they went in the street.
But
because they went in the street, because they protest, it's always the same thing. It's not the government which go ahead. It's obliged to go ahead.
So you have 50% more people voting, but did anything change?
Listen, dear, how many people vote?
In the United States, probably about, maybe 40% of the population?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And why? Why? You know the big thing? I don't vote because it will change nothing. I have heard that so many times. The guys say, "Oh, I do not vote because it will change nothing."
So do you vote?
So far, I did. So far, I did. Not anymore. Now I do. Plus, now I am against. I'm against the whole system. So I cannot support the system. So it's a difficult moral situation. I did vote for years, but now, if I am against. I am against because they took us for stupid. They tell you what they tell you what they want to tell you. They sell you what they want to sell you, and you say, "Oh, okay, it's perfect."
Well, since we're talking about government,
Yeah.
right, that can lead us up to number 2 in the general rules
What is
of
number
the
two?
posit. It's government, where it's represented by as many women as men.
Yeah, there is no. That's always the same thing. It's always the same thing. And the story of men and women in government, that's exactly the whole story about work and everything you want. The male, they have the big muscles. And they have the big muscles since centuries. So they are the guys who have the world because they have the big muscles. It's not true. The women, they do as much, if not more, than the men. The men, they go to fight. When you look at the history of the Middle Ages, the women, they were keeping the town alive. Well, those guys, they were fighting against each other. They were doing nothing else than fighting all year long. So there is no reason why the women, who beside that, there are more women than men on earth. So why are they not represented? If you are here today, it's because of a woman. And the women that give them the right to talk. And as there are more than people, there should be at least an equality of people in government. They have certainly as many ideas as you can have. That would eventually, if the ideas are different, you could argue, discuss, and come out with solutions. But if you have only one party, the male, they are the male, and they govern since centuries.
Yeah, the women have been elected officials for a little while now, and I read an interesting thing one time, because I personally believe that the age of the warrior god is over. We need matriarchs to
Yeah.
run things. We need a loving, caring society,
No, absolutely. Come on.
not a warrior society.
No, not anymore. If we have no war. If we have no war.
Well, I read an interesting thing that women will tend to vote like men when they're an extreme minority, but once they reach a threshold of, I think it was around 35%, they tend to vote as if more on the feminine side. It is interesting. And so what you're proposing, that if there was 50% women, it would be interesting to see how the laws might change,
Yeah,
how society might change,
that-
what is valued in society.
That would eventually, women, they have ideas that men do not have. As men, you can say have ideas that women do not have. But it would be good to have all that feminine side involved in the government. Why not? They are here to support you, to make your cooking, to give you babies, to work, to whatever. So why do they have their side in the government? Why would be only the men who can go at 8 o'clock with a cravat, with everything, when she's over there?
Right. If you have all businessmen and lawyers representing the public, all they're going to do is make laws, and the laws are going to benefit the business, right?
Exactly.
But if you have mothers in situations of power, they're going to act like mothers, right?
Yeah.
They're going to treat
Yeah.
in a mothering, kind of way.
Yeah.
But I know this might be a little off topic, but I'll give you my thoughts on
Go
feminism.
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'm all for feminism,
That's
all
all
for
right.
equal rights, right? You have to always preface yourself. But I do have a critique of it. And I know our audience is made up primarily of women here, but here's what bothers me about feminism and women going into the workplace and all of that. Right? So I'm old enough to remember when the father figure was the breadwinner and would go out into the workplace and the mother would stay at home. Right? You probably grew up like that.
Yeah.
So the father at the time was able to, with one paycheck, raise a family, have the house, send the kids to college, buy a car, everything on one paycheck. Right? That was like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Feminism comes along, which, I don't blame anybody for wanting to reach their fullest potential. However, if you've noticed, now it takes 2 paychecks and you're barely surviving. It's hard to have the house. Your car is probably on lease. You go in debt sending your kids to college. And I think what happened was feminists should have argued for, fought for, that if the woman wants to go into the workplace, she deserves as much pay, and if the father wants to stay at home, it still should be one paycheck can raise a family. Doesn't matter who's bringing in that paycheck. It just seems like we flooded the workplace with all these, with all women coming into the workplace, and it worked on behalf of the capitalist. Does that make sense?
Well, that makes sense, yes. You make the good sense of the woman later. But I believe that it is impossible. It is impossible in the future to have the class, just the men, leading all the things, the business, everything, and the only paycheck. I don't believe it's the future. I don't believe that.
Well, I would like to see that happen. To go back to that. I think we owe it to ourselves. Why is you have all these people working harder and harder? The average work week is now well over 40 hours a week, up to 50.
You are talking about something else, my dear.
I'm talking about economics.
You are talking about economy, talking like that. So it's the economy which obliges you to do like this or like that. If it was a sane economy, maybe you would not be obliged to do like this or like that. We are still in an economy of profit. The usual, century-old, that's where the Industrial Revolution came in, because that's the beginning of capitalism, because it's the first people with enough money to buy the first machine who were the master of everybody, including you. So today, the number of people went like that, and there was improvement, if you want, in industry, but it's still the industry which governs you, and you are obliged to go according to what they give you, not what they should give you, what they give you.
Yeah, they get to dictate that.
That's something else.
And we're moving towards, they say, a data-driven society. Technology-driven society.
So what are you going to do? So in other words, my dear,
AI society.
In other words, if you look at the history of economy in the world, you always see through 3 centuries now that it's only the people with the money, even today, my dear, it's the people with the money that govern everything. Govern indirectly, govern you, govern the government, govern absolutely everything. The money. Nothing else.
So are you saying that we should take away their money?
We should take away the money. No, that doesn't mean
you're going to get in trouble on. People see that.
My dear. Or we go on like that and we go to a catastrophe. Don't worry, because a catastrophe, I will tell you why. You were saying artificial intelligence and things like that. If you give those things in the hands of few people, because they will have the real money to buy the real thing, like the people with the first steam engine, exactly the same thing. But then you will have a robot making your job. So what will you do? And how will you protest to have some money?
And the people with the robots and the tech companies, they're the ones controlling all the speech too.
They will control everything, my dear. They will control the newspaper, they will control the TV, everything. They will control absolutely everything. That will be worse than the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, you had Mr. Karl Marx, you had all that, the communism, blah, 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 blah. Today, eventually, you have nothing at all, except me. I protest. But I protest against that. No, I protest against that because I see that it is the end of humanity as we know it.
Well, so are you saying we should take their money away from them?
Limit. I don't say take over. Limit. You know, when you make a painting, I say it's all based on the dialectic of the art. You make a painter. You don't paint on the wall on top of the painting. They paint on the wall on top of the painting. Means that you should limit the power of people. That people at the same level, no, that does not exist, and some people have more, can do more than others. So we must respect the possibility of people to do something, but to a certain point where it does not endanger the society. And if you have too much, you endanger the society. So the society should limit what you can have. Not take over, not at all, but limit in both ways what you can have, and the people who do not have enough, also they should have enough. Should limit everything, like you limit a painting between the frame.
I can agree with that. So how do we get to that? How do we get there?
To have their money?
Yeah.
It's very, very simple. The simplest way in the world. You don't remember Mr. I can talk about him, I didn't like him, but I talk about him, Mr. Charles de Gaulle.
Charles de Gaulle?
You know what he did one morning? Because some people during the war had made a lot of money with black market and whatever you want. Tons of money. So one day, you go to the bank, if you want your money, you change your money to a certain extent. And that's it.
So you would say that you could only bring in up $1 million.
Yeah, and if the limit is 500, you will have 500 of new banknote.
But if you have 502, those two go nowhere.
No, I mean...
It's like a reset.
It means that it was a way, if you want, it was a way to get rid of all what those guys had won on the back of the people during the war. So if they had made 1 million at that time, so you come with all your banknotes, you were allowed to only that much. And that was it, no more. You can come with 1 million. If it was 500 that you were allowed to, you had 500 new banknotes. And that was it.
But there might not even be banknotes anymore. It's just going to be digits on a computer.
Well, that's something else. That's something else. Modern technology allows few things that eventually, you can invent what you want in that domain. That's very possible. But nevertheless, it means limitations. Limitations on what you can have, because then if you go over those limitations, you have too much power over the people who have no, if you have. And you should have enough to survive. Now, all that, my dear, we are talking about what? We are talking about artificial intelligence, robots, and things like that. We can take over absolutely everything. A robot can build a house in 24 hours, complete house in 24 hours. So what are going to do all the people like you, like me, like all the people who work? If mechanically speaking, the government can do absolutely everything. And not paying you, of course, because they do it. So how do you solve the problem?
I guess everybody just doesn't work and gets
gets what?
their needs met, right?
How?
At least their food, clothing, housing, healthcare.
So you put everybody at the same level?
At least for the time being.
And I say that everybody, you know, the socialism and all that, it was everybody at the same level. And I don't believe in that also, because you have people who are more dynamic or intelligent than other people and can do more than other people. So you must give a certain freedom of acting to people, otherwise they will be very unhappy and will kill your government by unhappiness. You must leave the human nature be able to realize what it has to realize. That's one thing, but you must limit that. And how do you do to pay precisely, to pay all the people who will not have work, and excuse me, the people who will not have work, we have with them doing what? All day along in the streets?
Well, they can go to school.
To
They,
school,
they
okay.
can paint the paintings.
Yeah, okay, but for a few years, and then after that,
You get bored. Then you go flying airplanes.
exactly, or a boat or whatever it is. But you have to tax, then at that point, whom provide the money, you have to tax those machines
I can agree with that.
for the work they do in your place. You tax them, and they will pay for you. They do your job, they will pay for you.
So we have a little robot here. It doesn't
Yeah.
work very well. It's the kind that goes and supposedly cleans the floors. It just seems to go around in circles. And so that robot should pay the wages of the person who would come
Who would
come to clean the house.
That is to be discussed. If you had, you know, we don't go into details. What I mean, if you want, is that at the point of industry, if a robot really replaces, if a robot can do by itself
All right.
the work of 10 people, so what about those 10 people? Where do they get their money from?
Here's an example. Let's the car industry. Robots are
Yeah.
building most of the
Yeah.
car, right? So those robots should pay the taxes of the displaced workers.
Yes.
It's interesting. The price of the car would go up.
So what? Where is the problem? The problem is precisely that we went to China for what? To sell you your shirt a little less than if it was made here. So now we're in trouble.
Yeah, I don't even think it's a little less. I think it's the same price, but somebody's getting more profit.
Of course. It's always the same story, my dear.
So there is a profit incentive in the positive dialectic,
Yeah.
but a limited.
The dialectic say one thing. The dialectic say you always have two things which are different things. If you consider, for example, industry is made of two things: money and labor. Basically. Science in the middle. When I say labor, forget the science. Practically speaking, it translates in.
Well, resources would be that, but I guess that would be the money, right?
So you have those two things, my dear. You have the money and you have the labor.
Here, come
And for
closer
cent-
to the
for
mic.
cent- For centuries, there was a fight. There was such a fight. In the beginning, it was a disgusting fight. You know, when Karl Marx came in for the lawyers, for the workers, and all that. You know, the cities were absolutely disgusting. Now it did improve because with the centuries passing by, humanity became a little more human, if I can say so. The government was obliged to do more and more, and it's still the same problem. The same problem is that industry is made of money and labor. So the money is one thing, and if the labor does not exist anymore by men, so what do you do?
Then they control the world.
Then they have to pay it. It has to be paid one way or another one for you to be able to survive and to take a boat this afternoon and go shipping, you know. you will have to do things like that, otherwise people will become crazy.
Do you think they can replace all of human labor?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Even creativity?
Oh yes. You know, the machine today, you can do absolutely what you want with a machine. And when you see once more that a robot can build a house, complete house, in 24 hours, with beside that, with no leftovers. You know, when you have the guy who cut the wood, you have all the pieces of wood, blah, 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 blah. The machine, no, nothing of that. It will be clean. It will always be more or less the same hours. That's something else. But, you know, it will be clean and done by everybody but men. So.
They even have 3D printers that can print a house.
Yeah. You can do. You
I mean,
can do
there's a
everything
lot
you
of
want.
there's a lot of positives in that. It could make housing so cheap that
Yeah, and so
no
agreeable. It
homeless.
could be so agreeable that instead of working stupidly in a house for 10 hours, because if you want to be paid, during that time you could fly or go horse riding or whatever it is, which would be at the disposal of the public, the same way. So, hey,
But how important is working to a human being?
it's very interesting, my dear. So it's why you have to, one way or another way, have the people doing something when they do nothing. And it's where I say that, for example, if you go, I don't know, shipping, for example, you must be shipping all day, not shipping for 1 hour. Really shipping, you know, like a real exercise. Otherwise, you will become crazy. And maybe you could read a little more, and you could learn a little more also of the people know absolutely nothing at all. So, hey.
Well, I do know that for me personally, I identify with my work. It's a huge part of my life. I do know that a lot of other people that feel the exact same way, and people that are laid off, boy, after a while, they just get to be broken people if they can't find work. I know a lot of it is economically driven because they don't have the health care anymore. They don't have money coming in to pay the bills. But it's also, I think, a big part of it is that they feel useless.
Useless, absolutely. So you will have. I believe that the problem of the future, if we were going to a society the way we are talking about, would be precisely to find employees, to find a way for men and women, I mean humanity, to employ yourself, not being with turning your finger, doing something. So it's where you will have to create things, sports or no sports, whatever it is, but to keep people working on something. Otherwise, we'll become crazy.
And it's not that we need people to, I mean, there are managers, there are bosses. Not everybody's cut out to do that. There are people that are good at managing people.
Yes, and we are talking about shipping. You will have people to take care of ships, or create ships, or take care of ships.
Oh, they'll have a robot build them.
To a certain extent. Of course, you will have a robot doing a lot of things, but you will have people to entertain, let's say, not create, to entertain those boats, to be sure that the people are blah 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 blah. There is a lot of employees that will not be part of robots, which are human.
I think I read this week, I think it was this week I read it, that they're just getting ready to start using cargo ships where there's no captain, no nothing. It's all going to be...
You don't need a
It's
captain.
all going to be done by satellites.
Yeah, don't need a captain. Come on. What for?
Well, somebody to
To
take
do
a
what?
blame for the wreck, but...
To do what? You can, today, with the technology and everything, you can do, let's say in 20 years, in 50 years, in 100 years, you can do absolutely everything, technically speaking, by robots, by whatever you want. So you have to prepare humanity for that. And it is what no government today is doing. No government, no one is talking about the future. Have you heard any one of the guys? You see what they are talking about when they want to be elected. Everything but the future.
So do you think it's a good thing, this future we're projecting here?
You cannot, my dear, it's a good thing in the way that you cannot, or you can close your eyes and not consider it at all, or you can open your eyes and your mind and say, this is the future, and what can we do for the future?
You don't think we should pause until everybody gets an opportunity to have a say? Or you can't stop technology? You can't stop it?
No, you will never stop the technologies. Never. It's since that very famous thing, the guy who make the little shuttle automatic, that the first shuttle, to create the first shuttle. Since that time, it did not stop improving. The first one was like that. After that, it was automatic. After that, it was bigger. And we are today, at what we are today, a cargo with no captain.
Yeah.
You could have plane with no pilot.
You could?
Oh yes, they make the
But
demonstration.
Oh, they have drones.
They make
Nowadays,
the
they're essentially
demonstration.
planes.
Come on, the plane works without a pilot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pilot is not necessary.
We're time has gone by very fast. I'm surprised at this. We're all close to 40 minutes. But I want to leave the podcast on a positive note. So I don't want everybody to think, oh my God, the future is going to be so horrible.
No, the future. No, my dear. The future is the future, and the future will be what we will do of the future. And it is precisely where I am against a thing. For example, when all our politicians say we are the most democratic, etc., which is not true. Let's put the truth where the truth is, and the truth about politics and truth about working, all what is today and what will be the future. In fact, it would be, for me, it's criminal, if you want, not to consider the future, not to make plans to have the best possible things. With humanity could have things that it has never had. It's possible, at the condition that those things are at the disposition of humanity, not in the hands of few people. And that's it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that we can create the world that we want.
Exactly.
And we're entitled to it. Just by being human, just by being alive, we're entitled
Just
to
by
it.
thinking. And what I reproach to our politicians is precisely not to think. They think just about themselves, to be re-elected. Mr. Trump, it's a joke. I compare him to the dictator with Charlie Chaplin. I don't know if you have seen the dictator with Charlie. He's exactly the same, the same thing. So we must. I believe that precisely the duty of thinking human is to prepare that future. And what I reproach to the actual politician here, number one, they tell story about democracy, complete story. They do not educate the kids. How do you want those kids in the future to do if they are not educated? How do you want them to react if they are not educated? So it's why we must educate, we must put the things as they really are and prepare the future.
So if you could ask one question at these debates for the upcoming presidential election, what would that question be? Just one.
I told you that my first question was, what is democracy?
Okay, folks, that's
Just
it.
one question. What is democracy?
That's how we started the show,
Yeah,
and I hope you'll join us next week. You'll join us next week, right, Michelle?
absolutely.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Michelle, if people want to learn more, they can learn more by going to the website. The website is
the website. No-pennies.
.com.
It's for the people with no money. No-pennies. We represent the people, not the people with the power, the people.
And folks can always email us their questions, comments, and everything at info@radiofreewill.com. And make sure that you subscribe to this podcast. Make sure that you join us again next week. And we'll be going to part 3 of the general rules of the positive dialectic with Michelle Mockers. Thanks, everybody.